You probably know Steve Davis as the Iceman of snooker, the man who turned calmness into a weapon and carved his name into the history books by freezing out his rivals one frame at a time. But here's what you might not know. Steve Davis just turned 65, and his life now is nothing like you'd expect from the sport's original stone-cold killer. For years, Davis was the face of snooker's boom era. He won 6 world championships in the 80s, owned the #1 spot for 7 straight seasons, and made the Crucible feel like his living room. His methodical, emotionless approach made him unstoppable, and for some, unbearable. He was nicknamed boring, robotic, and too clinical to love. But when you're lifting trophy after trophy, who really cares? What's fascinating is that the real Steve Davis, the one away from the cameras and green bays, was never boring. Not then, and definitely not now. Because once the final balls were potted and the crowd stopped chanting his name, Steve Davis turned into something nobody saw coming. A man genuinely living life on his own weird, wonderful terms. When he finally put down his cue for good in 2016, Davis didn't slide into punditry full-time or retreat quietly to a golf course. Sure, he does some commentary for the BBC, and yes, he'll still turn up at the Crucible every spring like a piece of furniture. But that's just the surface. Peek underneath, and you'll find a man reinventing himself at an age when most people are winding down. And here's the twist. Steve Davis, at 65, is arguably having more fun than ever before. If you think a 6-time world champion spends his evenings in slippers watching reruns of his old finals, think again. Davis is out there spinning records in dingy nightclubs. Yes, you heard that right. Steve Davis DJ, and not just any DJ, but a genuinely respected figure in the underground music scene. It all started with his love for progressive rock and experimental sounds. Long before he was lifting trophies, he was a geek for bands like Magma, Gong, and Van der Graaf Generator, bands your average snooker fan had probably never even heard of. In his playing days, this was a side of him only close friends knew about. But when the pressure lifted, Davis let the world in on his secret. He teamed up with London DJ Kavas Tarabi and formed the Utopia Strong, a band that blends electronic music with psychedelic improvisation. Together they've played Glastonbury, released albums, and earned a cult following. Imagine telling a young Steve Davis fan in 1985 that their hero would one day be shredding modular synths to a sea of ravers. They'd laugh you out of the club. Yet, here we are. It's not a vanity project either. Davis doesn't show up just to pose behind the decks for a few photo ops. He's deeply involved, geeking out over equipment, discovering new sounds, and curating obscure tracks that send music nerds into meltdown. In interviews, he lights up when talking about music, far more animated than he ever was dissecting break-offs or safety shots. And then there's his love for poker. After he put snooker aside, Davis poured hours into the poker tables, grinding tournaments with the same icy focus that made him a champion on the bays. He's played the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas and multiple televised events in the UK. He's also a published author, of course. Over the years, Davis has written several books, and not all of them are about snooker. Some are about chess, another of his obsessions. He's not a master by professional standards, but he approaches the board like he did a snooker table, calculating, patient, fascinated by how the pieces connect. And when he's not doing any of that, you might find him fishing, or chatting away on obscure podcasts about progressive rock, or playing the role of surprise guest at local music festivals. It's almost comical how different this life is from the one snooker fans still picture. But maybe that's the point. For decades, Davis was boxed in as the boring champion, a man who drained all the fun out of the game with his machine-like dominance. Even his biggest fans admit it wasn't always thrilling to watch. Yet the truth is, that cold, clinical exterior hid a man who never stopped being curious, never stopped searching for the next thing to master. Ask Davis today, and he'll tell you he's more relaxed now than he ever was at the table. He's got nothing left to prove. He saw the Crucible's pressure cooker from the inside and walked away satisfied. The trophies gather dust in his snooker room at home, but the decks and records, well, they're getting played. When he's asked if he misses the big breaks and packed arenas, he doesn't flinch. He says it plainly. Snooker gave him everything, but he never planned on letting it define him forever. And that's what makes Steve Davis at 65 so refreshing. He's the same guy who once stared down the fiercest rivals in the world, but now he's staring down a festival crowd, waiting to lose themselves in a wave of synths and strange sounds. He's showing that reinvention can be wildly fun. The younger players on tour still look at Davis with awe. He's a legend, an unshakable piece of snooker's golden era. But catch them off guard, and you'll hear them talk about how they can't quite picture him behind a DJ booth, twisting knobs and queuing up tracks that sound like alien transmissions. But Davis loves that contradiction. He loves that the fans who once called him boring would probably be the first to slip out of his DJ sets after 10 bewildered minutes. It's not for everyone, and that's exactly why he does it. He's also honest about aging. At 65, he jokes about aches and pains, about needing a nap after a late gig. But there's a spark there that snooker alone could never show the world. He talks about new music with the passion of a teenager discovering it all for the first time. And don't think for a second that he's lost his sense of humour. If anything, Davis might be funnier now than he ever was under the TV lights. He pokes fun at his own legacy, laughs about the boring tag, and plays up the idea that the last person you'd expect to see behind a synthesizer is the same man who once made Alex Higgins slam his cue in frustration. And here's another twist. Davis never really left snooker behind. He still mentors young players when asked. He's the quiet voice who reminds them that winning is great, but identity is more than trophies. His story is a reminder that it's possible to walk away at the right time and still have chapters left to write. What's wild is how different this aging champion is compared to so many sporting legends who cling to the past. Some athletes struggle when the roar of the crowd fades. They linger too long, replaying old matches in their heads, trying to stay relevant. But not Steve. He took that same stubborn discipline that made him unbeatable and redirected it into passions that don't come with rankings or prize money. For him, that's freedom. At 65, he's still collecting stories, still expanding the strange universe that lives in his head. Fans still stop him in the street. They want to talk about that black ball final in '85, or the rivalries with Taylor and Higgins. He smiles, signs the autograph, shares a joke, but inside he's already moved on. His mind's on the next gig, the next record, the next hidden band he wants the world to hear. There's something inspiring about that, isn't there? That one of the sport's coldest operators is showing us how to age with curiosity instead of fear. That retirement doesn't have to mean slowing down or fading into the background. That there's a version of yourself you haven't even met yet, waiting beyond the career that once defined you. So next time you see Steve Davis pop up on your TV during the World Championship, remember this. Once the studio lights go off, he's not heading home to watch old highlights. He's probably off to a tiny venue in Brighton or a festival tent in Somerset, ready to spin sounds that would leave most of his old snooker rivals scratching their heads. And maybe that's the greatest break Steve Davis ever made. Not the century breaks or the world titles, but the break from expectation, from the box he was placed in all those years ago. So here's the question. When you're 65, will you be brave enough to flip the script like Steve Davis? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more stories about snooker's legends and what they're really up to when the cameras stop rolling, stick around. There's plenty more to come.